Let's bring in former White House Communications Director Alyssa Farah-Griffin, Republican strategist David Polyansky, and former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. David, you're laughing while watching that.
Yeah, well, I think he's mastered the one quality that Trump will appreciate, which is deference. Whatever the president says. But I understand it is it's unseemly to sit there and say, here are my great qualities. This is why I would be the best person. Now, he may have handled it a little less awkwardly, but I don't question his instinct to not want to be a kind of shameless self-promoter. There are plenty of those out there. We know that.
Alyssa, you obviously worked for the last vice president to Trump. What did you make of Burgum's pitch, or maybe not, articulating
Honestly, my money's starting to lean toward Burgum. And listen, he's in many ways like Mike Pence with a higher net worth. He's somebody who's not going to come crossways with Trump. He's somebody who's steady. He can go out, raise money. He can help down ballot candidates on tickets. And I think that the former president genuinely likes him. From an electoral standpoint, I think Marco Rubio is the scariest for the Biden-Harris team. That's somebody who could make inroads with Latinos. That's somebody who I think for sort of Trump-skeptical Republicans, they trust him, they know him, and that could bring them back into the fold. J.D. Vance, my fear there, or my analysis there is that I think he could outshine Trump. I think he's somebody who has a big persona, and there could be real skepticism of having him in the West Wing.
Yeah, if he joined the ticket, J.D. Vance at least, obviously he's quite young. He's 39 years old. He has a lot of road to go. And so I think, when Pence even set up a PAC when he was inside the White House.
And that was a whole thing. No one was happy about
that. A huge story in the news cycle.
Well, look, I think we're at a different place than we were a month, certainly 2 months ago with the president in the choice that he can make. When you look at the 7 battleground states, he's leading on average in Real Clear Politics, in some cases comfortably, 5 out of 7, and the other 2 he's tied in. And Virginia's now in play, so Minnesota and even New Mexico. And when you talk about the cash advantage or disadvantage that we formerly faced, Marco Rubio might have been a cleaner pick 2 months ago, but right now, if you looked at the combined authorized committees, the Trump team has $235 million at their disposal compared to $212 for Joe Biden and the Democrats. So the politics are in Trump's favor right now, and so is the cash advantage. So I think he gets to actually make the pick of who he'd be comfortable with rather than who politically or financially might get him there.
Yeah, which is what Burgum was arguing. But obviously, speaking of fundraising, Thursday night's going to be a huge night for both of these candidates. When you're watching this, David, is there room? Is it going to change the race substantially, what we see on Thursday night potentially?
That's a really good question. If one candidate completely craters, and in the case of Biden, that would be performing poorly, reinforcing concerns about his age. In the case of Trump, if he had a repeat of what happened 4 years ago in that first debate, I think that would be bad for him. I'm sure in some ways his team is happy to have mics muted and no audience because maybe that will enforce some control. The question about Biden is whether he can control events. The question about Trump is whether he can control himself. But if they each do what they need to do, and now they're trying to raise the expectations for Biden, but they spent years setting them, and to the point where if he comes and goes under his own power, he's sort of cleared the bar.
That's a great point because Trump has spent 4 years saying that Biden can't put 2 sentences together. He has changed his tack in the last several days. As Bakari told me yesterday, they had kind of set the standard so low it was essentially in hell. And when you're looking at that, now Trump is saying on Truth Social that Biden needs to do a drug test before the debate. I remember it's like in 2020 when he was saying Biden was going to be wearing an earpiece. He kind of uses these things as a distraction technique from the actual debate itself.
Correct. And it's to have a way to argue on the other side. It was rigged. That's the same reason you have his spokespeople going after the moderators and criticizing them. But I'd also remind folks, in 2020, Donald Trump lied about his COVID test. Those of us in the White House working very closely with him did not know that he tested positive just days before and appeared on the debate stage. So it's rich now that he's saying Joe Biden has something to hide and isn't being forthright with the American public. But listen, I think it's high stakes for both of them. I think Donald Trump has to prove the competency and the ability to get through it and be steady and not go crazy, not lean into the rage and retribution. And for Biden, the issue of age, that is baked in. He needs to show he can do it.
But the question is, this race has basically, yes, there have been some fluctuations, but the race has been actually pretty stable for a very long time. One of the questions is, can one of them blast through that and create some movement? And I'm not at all sure. You're talking about two, probably the best known candidates for president we've ever had, and two incumbents running against each other, or one former incumbent. People know them. I think it's tough to move the needle, but you have to pass the test.
I'm not sure Trump feels he needs to move the needle right now. I think Thursday night is incredibly important for the president, because if he starts off on the wrong foot heading into the fall, I don't know that he can recover.
Yeah, but David, I would say if the president surprises on the high side, that is a problem for Trump. That would concern me if I were Trump. And one question is, if Trump realizes in the midst of this debate that, geez, he's actually doing pretty well, does he become more aggressive? That's what happened in the second debate last time.
Well, and this could very well be one of the biggest stages that they have until, the next debate's not until the end of September.
If it happens.
If it happens, no one knows. Early voting will be underway. And so it is a moment for both of them to see them side by side in a way that no one has in 4 years.
Right. And the Biden team, I think, was smart to agree to this earlier debate and to push for an earlier one, because they're wanting to create the real general election rush right now. They don't want to wait till 3 months out when we know most voters actually make up their minds. So drawing out that contrast, reminding people why they did not vote for Donald Trump in 2020. But it could cut both ways. I've been with Donald Trump and seen him perform for 90 minutes and able to stay roughly on message, not say crazy things, largely have his head wrapped around policy. There's a world in which we see that. I think this format does benefit him. He doesn't have an audience that makes him want to be bombastic and loud, but we'll see.
Yeah, his rallies are 90 minutes on a short day.
If he shows up with the rally speech, though, and he's speaking about immigrants poisoning our blood and the greatest hits from rallies,
he has to know that. The
that
question
does not
is,
work.
if provoked, how does he respond? At some point, does he just does something trip his wire? And
the felony convictions, January 6th. There's a lot.
I think that's why they've been running an ad for a week and a half featuring the felony conviction. I think they want to get in his head.
We will see if they do on Thursday night. Alyssa Farah-Griffin, David Polyansky, and David Axelrod. Thank you all. In the lead up to that